Everybody, welcome to another episode of The Paradigm Shift. Thank you guys for joining. I am joined by Israel,
Always Sapien.
and he's joining me today for an episode. We're talking about a few things in regard to fitness, health, wellness, all of those things. And I'm sure that I've been, given a lot of information, a lot of game, and the results are showing. So I thought that this would be something that would be worth sharing. So I know I took a little hiatus. I've been away for a little while. Been super busy. Have a lot of new insights to share with you guys in a lot of different areas. But we'll get right into it, shall we? All right. Israel, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate it, man. It's good to have you here. Basically, I asked you to come down because we had a lot of interesting conversations. But I'm sure this won't be the first or the last. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things. But the main thing that I want to talk about would be fitness, because that's how we were introduced to each other.
Yeah.
I know that before I used to box with DCU,
Yep.
and we sparred each other a couple of times. No, I think we only sparred each other once.
Yeah.
But I think it was from there that we started, kind of knowing of each other. We have a mutual friend, Malik.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's spoken a lot about you before but we just never got around to actually,
Yeah.
meeting each other. So, then we finally got a chance to meet each other. We're very similar in a lot of ways. And I thought it would be really valuable to basically give all of the game that you've been giving me and giving on the platform. So thank you for joining me.
Again, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
And
appreciate it.
actually, just another interesting point to note as well, and how our paths crossed. So after we sparred each other and we got introduced through Malik, we also found out that we lived together in the same apartment block before I moved out. So that was also kind of weird and cool at the same time.
Yeah. No, definitely, which is really cool. But so you currently work in tech sales,
Yes.
if I'm correct. But you studied
Sports science and health.
sports science and health. So, and what you basically do outside of work is everything sports science and health,
Yes, sir.
which is really interesting. And that's why you have the channel that you made, Always Sapien. Also, you should make a YouTube channel. That was a thought that I had, but I'll speak to you about that later.
Yeah.
But Always Sapien is like. So tell us how that came about and how we got to where we are today.
So are you asking about like how I came up with Always Sapien and kind of why
Yeah.
I okay, so
Let's start there.
yeah. Let's start with why I came up with the name Always Sapien. So I'm someone who from a very young age I've always been very intrigued by human beings, in terms of our history, sort of the evolution of our species and why we are the way we are today. And also as someone who sort of grew up on the chubby side as well as a kid, but also very active in sports, this was always sort of like a central theme in my life. So once I finished secondary school, I obviously started college in DCU, and I think it was through particular modules within my course, like genetics, which was really interesting, and biomechanics, I started thinking a lot more about like how humans are interfacing with their environment in today's modern world. Where like I find that our world today is engineered for us to be to use as little energy as possible.
Sedentary.
So yeah, exactly. So our world is engineered for us to be sedentary. So that's when I started kind of thinking about, okay, how do I get us back to a point that we were sort of pre-industrialization, where physical activity was more of a central part of our lives. And that's when I came up with the name Always Sapien. So to me, Always Sapien means sticking to our roots, basically. Always kind of embodying the sort of core principles that made us who we are.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's kind of sticking to the original design of like human beings,
Exactly.
what we wear. Like we're Homo sapiens, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yeah.
okay. So then you just put the always.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
No, I like that.
Exactly.
So then, how did it begin? Because I know it began in yourself, but what made you take that jump then to start? Always Sapien. I know that you were already doing it in school, and it's what you really did fall in love with.
Yeah.
But how did you make that transition? Because you have a full-time job now,
Yeah.
and tech sales is fairly lucrative. But what's making you what's dragging you towards this health and wellness and wanting to share that information with everybody else?
So for me, this is it's quite interesting actually. So I have a pretty lofty sort of dream, right? And whether I hit it or not doesn't matter, but I think it's the intention that matters. So my dream has always been that even as an adult, I believe in the principle of play, and I find as adults we obviously don't do that. You know, we don't do that enough. It's either we go to work, or for recreation we go out, we have drinks, or we have food or things like that, right? So physical activity isn't really like it's not a central part in how we like unwind and I suppose play with each other. And for me, the reason why I decided to sort of take the jump and start Always Sapien as a business, as a movement, was to sort of take the first steps into encouraging people to first of all become fitter, because as part of my research, I found that the fitter someone is, the more likely they are to engage in physical activities. Right?
Okay,
Yeah. So another angle I take at that is the more proficient people are in like basic fundamental movement skills like running, jumping, balancing, things like that, the more likely they are to try other activities like playing tennis, which is really popular at the moment, for example, or
it is
different
actually getting very
or like
popular.
different types of activities like that. So
Interesting.
yeah, that's pretty much what made me take that jump.
Okay.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously I'm doing tech sales. It is pretty lucrative, but again, I'm sure many other people can relate with this. But for me, money isn't really like it's not the sole motivator for me to do the things that I do. Of course, money is good. It's a tool, you know, that you can use to as leverage to do the things you want to do in this world.
Yep.
But for me, it's I really want to make an impact, and I really want to make a positive impact in people's lives, and you know, hopefully change people's outlook
Okay.
on the idea of fitness and health
Interesting.
as a whole.
So then, because I know now that you have you've started this movement, you've made that change in yourself and started Always Sapien, the business and the movement. And I know that you have like a community that you've built, and that's how we can talk on the app and all of that stuff. We can touch on all those things later, but I'm still wanting to go into the before all of that happened. So when was Always Sapien, and how did it get to the point where it is now, where you have an app, you have community within it, people can talk in there, you can give messages, you can structure people's
Right.
programs, all of that stuff. So,
Okay.
So what happened at the beginning, and how did it get here? Like, what
Right.
iterations did you make?
Yeah. So this actually started during the pandemic. So during the lockdown, obviously, as a lot of people can relate to, I found myself with a lot of free time,
Okay.
a lot of time to think, and a lot of time to sort of, a lot of time to think about, what I wanted to do with my life. So that was when I decided, because before formally kind of creating the concept of Always Sapien, I was already sort of training people, not for money or anything, but just kind of, giving people advice, giving people programs, obviously mostly friends and family.
Yep.
And once I started seeing that they were getting really good benefits out of it, I decided to formalize it a little bit more. So I started organizing like my workouts in spreadsheets. So I was using Google Sheets, I was using Google Drive a lot, using documents as well to sort of summarize their progress when I was checking in with them weekly. It was very much a trial and error process at the very beginning,
Yeah.
because during the lockdown, of course, many people were isolated. So I was living with my girlfriend at the time, so it was just really me and her in the house.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really seeing my friends that much unless we were sparring, which we probably shouldn't have been doing, but we'll keep that under wraps. But yeah, so what I would do is I would pretty much figure out what was the best way to communicate with my, let's just call them clients. What was the best way to communicate with my clients? Figuring out what worked. So at first I just tried like a multi-channel approach, like keeping up with them on Snapchat, Instagram, things like that. Then I found that was becoming a little bit taxing and it wasn't very efficient. So that's when I decided to kind of centralize things and reach out to them via email,
Yeah.
so that I could kind of tie that in together with obviously the Google suite of products. So
Yep.
Gmail, spreadsheets, Google Docs, all of that kind of stuff. And I was doing that for a while actually. So I was doing that for maybe a year and a half. And that's then when, so as I got more experience in sales, so actually just a bit of background. So during that lockdown period, I had just graduated college.
Yep.
And I went straight into a graduate program where I sort of got my first kind of my earliest kind of rudimentary experience in sales. I was wearing multiple hats, but business development was one of them.
Yep.
And then that kind of then gave me a push to go into tech sales. I had some friends in tech sales at that time already, so they also kind of pushed me towards it as well. So then as I started learning more and more about SaaS, software as a service, I kind of then tied that in with what I was doing, and
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
and then it kind of informed my decision to like optimize my client experience.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, so I already have some sort of a process, in a very like a basic sense. So how could I put that all together in a way that makes it as easy as possible for my clients to adhere to their program, basically.
Okay.
So about a year and a half in, then I started researching like different software. So I looked at my PT Hub, I looked at Everfit, I looked at True Coach, and I looked at a few others. And after testing a few of them out, I decided to go with Everfit as it kind of aligned with how I wanted to deliver my service
Yep.
most closely. So yeah, I pretty much had to move all my data to that, which took a lot of work. But of course, to to do any venture well, like a lot of work and sacrifice is going to be required. So
Yeah, of course.
I did that, and then things just kind of took off from there. Then
Okay, okay. No,
yeah,
that's really interesting, actually. Yeah. No, that's very interesting because I've always wanted to know how did we get to
yeah,
this point now where I'm discovering it, and it's just like I just moved in.
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't,
yeah,
there was no, barrier or anything like that. So it
yeah.
was
You're
really easy.
benefiting from all of
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
once again, thank you for even taking the jump because I'm seeing gains in ways that I actually haven't seen in a very long time in terms of like calisthenic strength. But the biggest thing that I really appreciate about the program that you have is the fact that it's fully custom. It's catered to my because you've seen my schedule. You know how busy I am outside of work. I have like basically as soon as I finish work, I'm back in working again on like all these other things that I'm
Yeah,
doing.
yeah,
And the program that you made was fit around my exact schedule.
yeah.
Which is something that I wouldn't find anywhere else. And I was trying to do a lot of things on my own. And I just couldn't figure it out. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, let me just go carnivore. And,
Yeah,
I saw a
yeah.
video and one person says, oh, well, if you just go carnivore, you can never overeat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
then you
yeah.
basically broke it down. It's just like, no, it's like the simple premises, calories in versus calories out.
Yep.
You lose weight. Calories, if it's less, if the calories in is less than the calories out, you lose weight.
Yes.
If calories in is more than the calories out, then you gain weight.
Exactly.
It's just very, it's like, it's that simple.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But, I never thought about it. I never thought about tracking the food that I eat. I never
Yeah.
thought about, oh, let me log it and see what it is. Never thought about logging workouts.
Yeah.
Like if I do a workout now, I don't know how many reps or sets that I did. It's no track, no progress. It's like
Yes.
I won't know how much I'm doing because used to see people in the gym when I did go, and they'd have like a booklet after every set, and I'm just like what are they doing?
What's this poser doing?
Look,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
wasting all this time. You could be getting more
Yeah,
reps
yeah,
in.
yeah,
But
yeah.
meanwhile, I'm there, and then I come the next week, and I don't even know what I did last week.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, just
Yeah,
a few things
interestingly
like that.
enough, sorry to cut you off, but interestingly enough, there was something that you said multiple times, which is on your Instagram story. I think I've seen this a couple of times, which is fail to plan, plan to fail.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I always say as it relates to exercise management and kind of managing your fitness progress is whatever gets tracked gets managed.
Yep.
If you don't track it, it doesn't get managed.
Yep.
So if you're not tracking it, especially in this day and age, then it's like you're running through the woods in the dark.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true, and I believe that I was as well. Like I've always been fit, and luckily my like I built like a robustness in my body because I used to be so active as a kid. Like I used to do 5 sports simultaneously. Like and then when I went to college, it all went down to one, and then I just focused on boxing.
Yeah.
And then I moved back home. Then I did Gaelic and boxing, and then it just went back to boxing again. But ultimately, then that boxing went from boxing 5 days a week to boxing once a week. And that changed very quickly. But luckily, in that time, I said, oh, let me not let myself get over, because it happened before, and it was during COVID, where my activity levels just went all the way down.
Yeah.
And that was the most unfit that I think I've ever been in my entire life during COVID. And I was 124 kilos. And it's so funny because when we started this program together, I was just under 120 kilos. I think I was about 120
Yeah.
kilos when I
Yeah,
started.
you were, yeah.
So basically, that's the heaviest I've ever been. But to be honest, because of the little stuff that I was doing from the rig that you gave me, and from me actually forcing myself to go and not rely on a boxing gym, not rely on a bunch of other things to be able to keep myself fit. As a result of that, I was able to start building a little bit of robustness again in the body.
Yes.
But so even though I was feeling, even though I was that 120 kilos like I was before. It was a different 120.
Yeah.
You know, I was carrying it way better than I was.
Yeah, you
Then
mentioned
I
that.
started fixing the nutrition a little bit, you know, with the limited knowledge that I did have, and you know I could start seeing results. And then I came across your program, and I told you, I think I said to you 4 months ago or something, that I'm going to sign up.
Yeah.
And then I eventually did, and you know it's been great since then. So in regards to you know, some common misconceptions that people might have in regard to like training and all of that stuff, like what is it, from all the clients that you've had, what are some of the things that you've seen that is just kind of like common principles that kind of follows with everybody when it comes to their fitness journey?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I know a lot of other trainers out there. If any of them are listening to this, can definitely relate to this. So, the first thing that comes to mind, especially with their approach to physical activity, is a lot of people believe that when they're trying to lose weight, just eat as little as possible and just do plenty of cardio, just
Yeah.
cardio, and while that's not the worst approach, I mean, I always say any physical activity is better than none.
Yep.
But for most people, right, for most human beings, their goal is to tone up.
Yeah.
Have that nice, hard, sleek look to their body, which is understandable.
Yep, yep.
But if you're trying to achieve that, then it's going to take a little bit more sort of conscious effort in how you're approaching this. So yeah, that's misconception number one, is that just doing plenty of cardio and restricting your eating to the point where you're only eating like 1,200 calories a day, which I don't think is healthy for anybody, especially as an adult. And the reason I say that is because it can actually become counterproductive. It might work at first, but it becomes counterproductive because when people say they want to lose weight, what they actually mean is they want to lose body fat. But what happens when you're in a calorie deficit is your body is just going to use up the resources that it has stored.
Yeah.
And those two main resources are your fat and your lean tissue, which is mainly muscle. So when you're losing that weight, if you're doing plenty of cardio and you're eating 1,200 calories a day, which means you're likely not getting enough protein in, it means that you're going to be losing almost just as much, if not more, muscle than fat.
Interesting.
So then, let's say you achieve your goal of losing 10 kilos, you've probably lost, let's say, just for an example, I'm pulling these numbers out of thin air, but let's say you lose 5 kilos of fat, but you're also losing 5 kilos of muscle. So then you look in the mirror, and while your clothes might fit looser on your body, when you take your top off, you still have that kind of soft, doughy,
Yeah.
like pudgy appearance.
Okay.
And you're wondering why, and that's why. So the way to correct that sort of a misconception, or I suppose to bust that myth, I say you need to, before you go in, I'm probably jumping the gun here,
No,
but
it's fine.
before you go into a fitness program, the first thing that you need to figure out for yourself is how much energy does your body burn per day with your current lifestyle. Then, and we can go into this in more detail a bit later if you want. And then you need to figure out how much energy are you taking in per day, which you obviously mentioned earlier. And once you have that number, then you need to figure out how much protein you need to be getting in comparison to your carbs and fats, because it's the protein that's going to the protein is the building block of muscle. So when you're eating protein, you're essentially offsetting the muscle degradation that naturally occurs with being in a sustained calorie deficit.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be the first misconception and the way to counteract that. So, sorry, I also forgot to mention, don't just rely on cardio, because while that is good, you're not giving your muscle a reason to stay.
Yeah.
So this is also something that I call the use it or lose it principle, which is if you're not using it, like, the human body is one of the most efficient systems in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we are so adaptable. The body is only going to adapt to the stimulus that is sort of put on it, right? So if you're not stressing your muscles out, the brain is going to say, well, we don't need this, so we can use this for other things. We can break it down and use it for energy. However, if you're strength training, if you're resistance training, if you're putting your muscle under enough stress, then your brain is going to say, oh, this person is crazy. We need to supply this person with more amino acids. We need to build up the muscle tissue more so that this person can go into this next time and not feel as sore or not struggle as much. So to kind of tie everything together, do your cardio, but focus on strength training, because this will give you the most bang for your buck when you're trying to tone up.
Okay. So with strength training then, is there a way to strength train at home, for example?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So this is another thing that I always say to my clients, that another misconception people have is that, okay, if they want to get toned, if they want to, like have those nice striations or have a six pack or whatever it is, or for women, get their waist snatched, get a nice, set of glutes, that they need to be in the gym, lifting heavy weights and things like that. And while this is obviously, in my opinion, the best approach, it's not the only approach. There's as my maths teacher used to say, there's plenty of ways to skin a cat. So definitely you can get plenty of work done at home. You can do body weight training like what you're doing at the moment. But even if you don't have a rig like you do, as long as you have a wall, a floor, and a chair, that's all you need. You can get a lot of horizontal work done, push-ups, planks, all of that kind of stuff. In terms of pulling movements, that might be a little bit more tricky. But again, resistance bands are relatively accessible and relatively cheap as well. Amazon is there. So yeah, you can get plenty done at home.
Yeah, so people can really get a good pump, like as though they were lifting weights.
100%.
With no equipment.
100%.
Just in their home.
100%.
With just resistance bands and a chair.
Yeah.
And you have enough to get a really solid workout.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I say resistance training. So resistance training means resisting against gravity. So the muscle itself doesn't know like what is being used, and it couldn't care less.
Yeah.
Like if I do 30 push-ups in a row, and those last 5 push-ups of the 30 push-ups have me shaking, I might as well be bench pressing 120 kilos, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the muscle doesn't know the difference.
Yep.
You're still breaking the muscle down. So
okay.
yeah.
No, I think that's really interesting. Yeah. And that'd be good for a lot of people. Another misconception, which I'd like you to debunk, is how some women would say, "Oh, I don't want to lift weights because I'll get too big."
I'm happy you asked
I'll
this.
get too big. I'll get too I don't want to look like a bodybuilder.
Yes.
Please debunk this one for us.
Bro, Tunji, I'm so happy you asked this question. And I actually didn't even consider this one.
Yeah.
I love when women ask me this, because I'm like, first of all, how arrogant of you to think to think that you're going to get too bulky when there are people that dedicate their whole lives to even just building half a kilo of muscle in the space of 3 months. And you think you're going to do it by accident. Get out of here, man. That's ladies, please, you are not going to get too bulky. It's just not going to happen, right? Like for you to reach that point, on like physiques that you see from female bodybuilders and stuff, that's going to take, like, you're probably going to have to quit your job, right? Like it's it takes a lot of work to even get there, and a lot of dedication in the kitchen, careful monitoring of your meals and things like that, as I alluded to earlier with the macro distribution of protein, carbs, and fats. So ladies, do not worry. Pick up those weights. You're not going to get too bulky.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. That's great. Because, I think that's something that a lot of girls worry about. It's like, but, and that's why you see them on the Stairmaster for the whole gym section.
Absolutely.
They'll come to the gym to do walking. You can walk for free outside. But, that's like the big thing. Like, women should lift heavy weights.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing as well?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I'll also add that, so I mentioned earlier that, a lot of people, especially women, when they're trying to get on a fat loss journey, they just go straight to cardio, Stairmaster, treadmill, all of that stuff. And while that's good, if you're trying to get bang for your buck, prioritize weights. Like if I was to pick one of the two for you to do for the rest of your life, I'd say go for the weights, because that's still a form of energy burning. You're still going to burn calories from lifting weights. And you're also going to get the added benefit of building lean tissue, muscle, which also muscle itself is very metabolically active compared to fat, which is
way more
metabolically active. So even just by having more muscle on your body is going to burn more energy at rest throughout the day.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, because that's the case for myself. I've been eating fairly high protein meals. I've limited my carbs a good bit, and that's actually helped with weight loss. But the main thing is, I can be sitting in this office, and sometimes I'm sitting here for like 10 hours without leaving.
Yeah. And
I will be absolutely sweating. I have a fan. I have to buy a fan to bring in here. Yeah. Because it gets that hot in here. Yeah. And but a lot of the times, doing little work, I find myself sweating more. But it's because I've built more muscle, and as a result, my body's actually just constantly working. And I saw an example of a guy that said that they were stranded out in a forest, and this is a really cool example actually, and it led me to actually understand it and soak it in a little bit more. It said that he was out there, and these people weren't eating; they were all starving, but he knew how to hunt. So he was hunting, and he was getting rabbits and eating the rabbits, and because rabbits are so lean and they have no fat on them at all, the only fat they had would be like the brain, and the brain's really small, and the eyeballs or whatever. But he'd be eating the meat, and he said that he was losing weight just as fast as the people that had no food at all. Because protein.
I've actually seen something similar.
Protein on its own, like it's constantly working. It's constantly burning.
Yes.
And so you'll reach starvation just at the same rate as someone that's not eating anything. So having more muscle really means that your body will actually be burning more by doing nothing.
100%. And there's actually a name for this, because I actually read something on this not too long ago as well, like a couple of days ago. I think it was called like protein starvation or something like that. Something along those lines. But yeah, you're spot on there. And also another fun fact to add on top of that is that so there's a concept in physiology and in nutrition called the thermic effect of food, and I actually made a post on the Always Sapien page recently about this. And the thermic effect of food basically describes how much energy the body has to burn just to digest the food in the first place, because digestion is also an energetic process. So with carbs and fats, for example, the body doesn't really have to use as much energy to break it down into their simple component parts, glucose, etc. Whereas with protein, I always compare protein to steel and carbs and fats to wood, where wood is easier to burn. Steel takes a lot more energy to melt down. So, and to sort of put a number to it to help the listeners conceptualize this. So with protein, about 30% of the calories that you take from protein is lost just to the digestion process. So for example, if you were to eat 1,000 calories worth of protein, you would actually only be absorbing maybe 700 calories of that protein.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, and I think there was another thing called, because I was wondering why I was sweating so much, and I think it was something called like thermogenesis or something.
Yes, the thermic effect of food.
Yeah, the thermic effect.
Thing.
So it's just like the body's expending a lot more energy to break it down, to break down the proteins. That your internal temperature raises a little bit, and without even doing anything or changing anything, you'll be sweating more.
Exactly.
I was wondering, because it's just like I'm sweating more. I'm not smelling, but I'm sweating more. But I don't like feeling like sweating.
Yeah, you got all clammy.
I'm just like, what is this? I didn't understand it, but now I get it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like now that you're saying it, it all makes sense. Like carbs and fats are really easy to break down, but it's just like steel, wood. Yeah, perfect example. Okay, so going back then, so those are the common misconceptions. It's like, women won't get bulky. Cardio is not the way to, get the results that you're looking for. Because when people say they want to lose weight, that really what they mean is that they want to lose fat, body fat, and they need, they need resistance training in order to achieve that goal. And it was something else on that. So those are three fairly big misconceptions. Let's just say there's somebody that, never really trained. Like they used to play sports when they were younger, but it was just like, back then. But now they're in a stage where it's just like, they don't like what they see in the mirror in the morning. They want to feel strong. They want to feel like they look good for their husband or for their wife, and they also want to feel like, they're the man again, because like why wonder and say, like, why can't it's fine, like I'll never be like that. But it's like, how can somebody that's from the like basically from scratch, that let's just say they're unfit, they don't look the way they want to look, they want to look better, they want to feel better, where could somebody start? And let's just say they don't want to spend any money, or minimal money as possible.
Okay, so what I would recommend for someone who is at like ground zero is, and this might sound like a contradiction to what I said earlier about, like don't rely on cardio too much. But if we're talking about someone who is like, who hasn't trained in years, they're pretty much a beginner in terms of their training age, which is a concept that we can touch on if we have time for that later in this conversation. I would say the first thing you need to do, like I mentioned earlier, is find out how much your body burns per day. And you can do this relatively easily. Just quick Google search, search up basal metabolic rate. This is a term given for how much energy your body burns at rest. Find out what this is. So whatever calculator you find online will ask you to put in your age, your height, and your weight. And these are pretty much the three main sort of variables that is needed to sort of give a good estimate of how much energy your body burns at rest. And what I mean by at rest is if you're just to be seated all day.
Yep.
So for example, for me, if I was to just lay in bed all day, my body burns about 2,200 calories, right? And then anything I do on top of that will obviously add to that.
Yep.
So find out what your BMR is, and then on top of that, then find out how much energy you burn from whatever amount of physical activity you do, whether that's if you walk to work or if you walk to the shop in the morning, whatever little amount of physical activity you already do, find out how much you burn. It might only be an extra 200 calories, 300 calories, whatever, but this is very important to know. So that would be the first step. Find out your sort of baseline values.
Yep.
Then after that, then you would need to find out, and I know a lot of people don't like tracking their calories, but I always say as well, modern problems require modern solutions, right? We're not living in prehistoric times anymore. You know, we're living in a modern world where we have access to food in supermarkets. You know, we're making money in various ways. We don't have to chase animals or gather food or things like that. So, of course, we have more options than our ancestors have ever had, right? Like, we're living in a time of the most abundance in human history. So, why I say this is track your calories. You know, if you're trying to make a change, you have to. You know, I'm not saying it's not going to work if you don't, but it's going to be very hard, especially if you're someone who, you know, may not know, you know, how to go about it, or someone who may not be very disciplined in, you know, portion control and things like that, which many of us, me included, are not at the best of times. So that's why find out how much you burn, find out how much you eat, and you can do this with simple calorie tracking apps like MyFitnessPal. I know, again, this can be daunting for many people, but even if you just do it for 1 week, just track everything you're eating for 1 week to give you an idea of, okay, this is how much I usually eat in a day. Wow, I didn't realize I ate that much. Now, you might need to spend a bit of money here, in that I would urge anyone in this position at ground zero, get yourself a kitchen scales. This should be a kitchen essential. The same way you have mugs, the same way you have plates, same way you have things like that. I mean, if you're someone who drinks coffee, like, I mean, a kitchen scale is like the price of maybe 3 jars of instant coffee. It's not very expensive. You can get them for 10, 15 euros on Amazon. Get yourself a kitchen scales. If you really, really want to be cheap and you don't want to get a kitchen scales, then you can use a mug. Most standard mugs are about 250 ml, which is about like a standard cup. So
250 ml also equates to 250 grams.
Actually, that's a great point, actually. For a lot of foods and liquids, yes, but for some it might be a little more complicated, especially like due to the shape of things like berries, for example. But so suss out how much you burn, suss out how much you need to eat, and then make changes to what you're eating. So before you even get a gym membership, or before you even design yourself a program, which I'll get to, before you do any push-ups or squats, take the first couple of weeks to just really fix up your eating. So make sure you're getting more protein in than you currently are, because a point I wanted to make earlier as well is that there's two things. There's two triggers that basically encourages the muscle to synthesize more protein. The first one is obviously resistance training. When you put stress on the muscle, the brain sends a signal to your muscle. So to put it simply, the brain sends a signal to the muscle saying, right, generate more protein. Generate more muscle. Synthesize more amino acids to add to your muscle mass. The second thing, interestingly enough, is simply the ingestion of protein. So just by eating a high protein food, it will have a similar effect on your body as if you were, let's say, doing a bicep curl or a squat or whatever, in that eating protein on its own is going to trigger the muscle to synthesize more muscle, which is very interesting. So that's why I say, like, once you found out your calories out and you found out your calories in, then you need to manipulate where those calories in are coming from. So have a look at the distribution of your protein and fats I mean your carbs and fats to protein ratio, and then increase the amount of protein you're getting in proportion to your carbs and fats without increasing your overall calories, or ideally while reducing your overall calories.
Okay. Okay.
That
So
would be where to start. Yeah.
okay, nice. And now, in terms of the ratio of proteins, fats, and stuff like that, you know how like I'll eat a steak, I'll eat steaks every day, or I'll eat
Yeah.
like 8 eggs for lunch or 9 eggs for lunch, and people will look at me like, "What? 9 bomba
Bumba
eggs?"
rascala eggs.
you know, like
And
they'll,
he's not from Ghana, by the
you
way.
know, So they'll see me eat all those eggs, and they'll be like, "How? That's bad because of all the fat in there. You'll get heart disease,
Cholesterol, yeah,
cholesterol, all of those things,
yeah,
like."
yeah.
And it's just like there's too much fat in that food or whatever. What's the split on how should it actually be? Because for me, I had to just do elimination to where it's like, let me just eat whole foods, like ingredients that I can number on one hand. Typically for me that works better because I know what I'm ingesting and I know how to track it.
Yeah.
Right. Because if it's a steak, I can just put it on the scale. This is how much steak it is, and it's 90-10.
Yeah.
Because that's what the butcher told me. It's 90-10 split. Okay, no problem. This can give me a trackable thing.
Perfect.
But let's just say if it's this and then it has like 5 different, 15, 20 different things inside, how are you going to track it?
Yeah.
But how would somebody? How should the split be between protein, fat, and carbohydrates? And also, I just want to touch on the misconception about fats. People would say, "Oh no, give me low-fat milk," because you think that you going for extra walks and then drinking a low-fat milk or something like that is better than full-fat milk. When it's just like fat is actually not something that should be shunned. It's actually really healthy. Your brain is made out of 90% fat.
Something like that. Yeah.
How are you going to replace the fat in your brain with carbohydrates or protein? Like I don't know if they can fuel the brain, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So fats are really really, really important, and that's what I've found. When I lowered carb intake and increased fat and protein intake, I lost weight and actually started to tone up more.
Yeah.
So I'd like if you could touch on
Okay,
that.
so I suppose before I get to like what should your macronutrient ratio be, I'll answer the latter part of your point first, with regards to fat. So this is where things get a little bit technical. So as a beginner, don't worry about this too much, but this is definitely important to know, and it's a very important question, so thanks for asking it. So the deal with fat is, first off, fat shouldn't be demonized. Fat is good for you, as you said. Like fats are used in the production of our cell structures. They're also precursors to various hormones as well. Fats insulate your nerve cells. There's obviously many uses for fat. Otherwise, we wouldn't be made up of. We wouldn't be partly made up of it.
Exactly.
Like fats are naturally occurring in nature. We need it. So that's just like a little footnote on that. In terms of someone who is trying to lose fat, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to try to be careful here. Ultimately, right, if you're just trying to lose weight, it doesn't really matter whether you're following a high-fat diet, a low-fat diet. People vary. Even genetically, people vary in their tolerances for different foods, different lifestyles, things like that. For example, I follow a whole foods, mostly animal-based diet, but I do get a lot of fruits and vegetables in as well. I don't really eat grains, so you could say I eat like a sort of paleo-leaning diet. But I wouldn't recommend that for everyone, right? Some people thrive off of a vegan approach. Other people thrive off a completely omnivorous approach that does include grains and things like that. And other people thrive greatly off of a largely carnivore diet. And you touched on elimination there as well. And I think the reason why a diet like, let's say, carnivore or paleo works for many people is because it eliminates a lot of the foods that sort of could have been contributing to whatever like autoimmune problems they were having or any other types of health issues that they were having as well. So it's sort of a good way to like cut all of that out and then see what's really wrong. So coming back to like the whole, like if someone's trying to lose weight and they're always like asking for low fat, that's not necessarily a bad approach, especially if you're someone who has, let's say, a relatively high level of body fat. So I would say, like, just from my own research, the opinion that I've sort of developed is that a healthy body fat range for men is about, let's say, like 14 to 20%, right? Like that's a good healthy body fat range to be in. And for women, it's slightly higher for obvious reasons, right? So in terms of like, the brain, being made up of mostly fat and a little bit of proteins as well, that is correct. But even if you were to eliminate fat for a period of time from your diet, however long that may be, again, everyone has different tolerances, everyone is designed differently. Your body has more than enough reserves. Fat is a very energetically dense molecule, right? So just to give a brief example to elucidate this, so protein and carbs will yield about 4 calories per gram. Fat will yield more than double that. So for every gram of fat, you're getting 9 calories.
Okay.
So you can already see there, it's like it's a very,
it can be quite significant.
yeah, very dense. And I mean, like, all of us, even me myself, who has a relatively low body fat percentage, I'm at about 19% right now. I have enough fat on me. Now, forgive me, anyone who's out there and is a what would I call them? Oh, the name's gone out of my head. But for those of you that, have Google out in front of them and are looking at the studies, forgive me if I'm a bit off here, but with the amount of fat that I have on me at the moment, I could walk for 3 days nonstop, and still have fat left over to keep me alive. So like, so if you do decide to cut fat out of your diet or reduce it significantly for a period of time, don't worry about, how's this going to affect my brain, things like that, because you have plenty of reserves in there to keep you going, right? Like, the fat is already in there.
Yeah.
And the body knows what to do in times where it's not getting a dietary source of this thing. It's just going to tap into what you have stored already.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. Okay. So that's what people can do in regards to starting, from scratch. So they get the BMR, after that they change the diet. And even before they even start thinking about working out, it's fixing all of those little tweaks first.
Yes.
And then, increasing their proteins, lowering their carbohydrates, lowering their fats.
Yeah.
Which I think is like, very, very good advice. And anybody can follow something. And also tracking, that's like the main thing. It's tracking, just buying a cheap scale.
Yeah.
I used to look at people that were tracking and be like, losers. No fat, like,
Wow.
no joke. I'm just like, what are you doing tracking? It's just like, what you're tracking, you're going to track yourself. Like, come and see me, come and see me. I don't track, like, and but now I'm realizing I'm now singing off the same hymn sheet. And it's so funny because I'm now seeing and realizing how calorie dense some foods can be. Like, like when I went on a hike, 10K hike in the mountains, right? And it's only because I did that hike and I got some Indian food. But with the Indian food I got, it was mostly protein. It was like 450 grams of protein, and then they give you a naan bread with some tikka sauce, right?
Oh yeah.
And this just blew my mind at the fact that when I tracked it, I weighed the naan bread and it was 185 grams, and I put it into my fitness pal. It told me it was 1,200 calories.
This blew my socks off as well, actually.
1,200 calories in a naan bread.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I used to be able to eat 2 of these. That's my daily calorie intake.
Both. Yeah.
That's my daily calorie intake.
Yeah.
On top of whatever else I add on top of that.
On top of that chicken or lamb.
Oh my goodness gracious. I didn't realize how calorie dense that was. So why is that? And I had a piece of apple pie. I had to throw it away because I'm just like, if it's not in the bin, I'm going to eat it. And I weighed it, I put it in, and it told me it was 450 calories. I'm just like, wait, I can eat 4 of them in a day, and that's all I can eat for the day.
Yeah. And then you'd probably still be hungry.
Yeah,
after
I'd be
that
starving.
Initial binge session. Yeah,
I would be absolutely starving.
100%.
And then it's like, but then I can eat whole foods, and I'm like yesterday, for example, I ate like a Whole Foods, and I still had 700 calories left for the day, and I was full going to bed.
Yeah.
Like how, like my
It's
brain
crazy,
can't
isn't it?
register. Please try and explain that to us.
Yeah, it's almost like alchemy or something.
Right?
It's crazy, but like, first of all, just a comment on the naan bread. I didn't, because when I hear bread, obviously, like I've been doing this for a long time. I've been obsessed with nutrition since I was a young teenager.
Yeah.
So I've built up a good storehouse of just data that I can just kind of call upon readily. But with the naan bread, because bread, it's usually what, like eggs, bit of wheat, flour, all that kind of stuff. But with naan bread, 180 grams is not a lot weight wise. But even when you showed me that, when you showed me the MyFitnessPal data, I even had to go and check it myself. I was like, just to make sure that like this guy wasn't bullshitting me or something. I was like, what? 12? And then I checked other sources as well. I was like, wow, this is all consistent. It's like, what are they putting in this naan bread? So if you're an expert on naan bread or Indian cuisine, please let us know in the comments or something. Because I don't know how they make that stuff. I'm guessing they put a crap load of butter or something in there to jack up the calories. But that was very surprising.
I would love to know.
But so to explain this, and this was actually something I wanted to touch on next. So like a lot of clients, and this is another kind of going back to the topic on misconceptions. This is another massive nutritional misconception that a lot of people have. So I could have someone come to me, let's say a guy come up to me who, like you said in your example, who used to play sports, let's say when he was in secondary school and in uni. He's now, a little bit older, let's say late 20s or 30s, and hasn't, been very active for the last, let's say, half a decade. And, they'll obviously be carrying a good amount of body fat on them, maybe more than 30% or whatever it is. So, they are overweight by definition.
Yep.
So they'll come to me. Actually, I had a conversation with a client who will be joining Always Sapien soon, just there 2 days ago. And he said to me that he doesn't eat that much. He only eats twice a day. Which obviously, like, you clearly do eat that much, right? like the proof is right there, right? But I get what he's saying in that the volume of food that he's eating isn't that much, which I can appreciate. But however, the energy density of the foods that he is eating is another story, right? Okay. So, for example, like you could take, like I love berries. I love getting frozen berries just because obviously it's a cheaper option than fresh, and it's pretty much the same quality.
It's the exact same.
Yeah. So let's say like I usually get like a half kilo bag of frozen blueberries or mangoes or cherries. I love them. And I'm someone who loves food. Like I like to eat. Same. Right? Yeah, which is why like I have to be very, well, not even very strict with myself, but just, like be very mindful of what I'm putting in my mouth, right? So like I could put down 500 grams of blueberries like that. Like, boom, it's in there. And it'll fill me up. And in those 500 grams of blueberries, like it's a big bag. You're getting about 250 or 280 calories, which is not a lot.
That is insane
for the weight of food that you're eating. And now compare that to, let's say,
6 nuggets.
Exactly.
At McDonald's.
Exactly. 6 chicken nuggets, which weigh like what, like 100 grams less.
Maybe even less.
Yeah, less than 200 grams, let's say. You're getting 6 nuggets for about 500 or 600 calories. Okay, I could be off there because I'm not sure.
No, I think you're about right. You're about right.
Yeah,
because I looked it up. The missus was eating it the other day. She had the chips, and I looked it up. The 9 nuggets, and it was 900 calories.
Damn.
Yeah.
Ooh. Sorry if I broke someone's ears there. Whoa.
In 9 chicken nuggets.
Whoa. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even nuts. Like while nuts are healthy, and this was another thing that I was going to say with the whole calories in, calories out. Like obviously we've already touched on this and debunked it, but a lot of people also come in with the misconception that, oh, well, I'm eating healthy, so why am I still gaining weight? So I just want to clear this up, that just because you're eating healthy doesn't mean you're not going to gain weight. Like, I mean, imagine an athlete now who eats healthy, but they're in a sport that requires them to at least maintain or gain weight. Like, of course, like they're going to have to gain weight. So like they're going to have to eat more, even if they are eating clean. So just because you're eating clean doesn't mean you're not going to gain weight. You still have to monitor how much you're eating. But so back to my example and kind of why I brought that up. So someone could tell me that, oh yeah, sure, I like I have maybe like a salad, maybe like a chicken salad or whatever with some dressing, which again, that's a problem in itself because that's very high in fat. But then they'll say, oh yeah, and then I have maybe 2 handfuls of nuts. Why am I gaining weight, for example? But then it's like, well, look at the 2 handfuls of nuts you're having. If you get a pack of cashews, you grab 2 handfuls of them mofos. That's, again...
100 grams.
Yeah, about 100 grams. And 100 grams of nuts is about 600 calories.
Whoa.
And I mean, you could put those 2 handfuls of nuts down easy.
Yeah.
That's 600 calories, boom, just
Yeah.
like that.
Wow.
And you might not even be nearly full from that. So then in about 30 minutes or an hour, you're going to be back in the fridge looking for something else, you know. So you've
Interesting.
added 600 calories and now you're going to eat some more on top of that. So while you may not be eating that much in terms of volume, in terms of the energy content, you're definitely eating way more than you should. And another issue that we face, especially in the Western world, you know, where we have like, you know, supermarkets that are, you know, just groaning to the brim with food,
Yep.
is that a lot of people, and this goes back to why it's so important to start off with whole foods, single ingredient foods where you have control over what's going in your body. Because when you're buying all of these packaged foods, processed foods, cereals, all of these kind of stuff, if you look at the back of, let's say, like a box of cereal, and this is a rule of thumb I always give my clients, that the less ingredients you see on the back of the package, if you're going to go for something packaged, the better. Because when you look at the back of, let's say, a cereal box, you're going to see you're going to see a thesis on the back of that thing.
Yeah, straight
you know,
up.
it's going to be a crap ton of chemicals. You're going to see emulsifiers, seed oils, all of these fats, all of this stuff, and you're going to have a ton of sugar on top of that as well. So while you're getting the sweetness out of it, you're also getting a good dollop of fat out of it as well, which is going to jack up your calories. And then it'll probably still leave you feeling hungry, because that's how a lot of these processed foods are,
It's because they're not
designed.
they're not nutritionally, you know.
Yeah, dense. Yeah,
Yeah, they're not nutritionally dense. So of course you're going to feel hungry.
Exactly. And then that's just going into you. Obviously, whatever energy you have in surplus, kind of like your bank account, that's going to add to your savings of fat. So, you know, at the end of the day, that's just going to be, the body's going to be like, okay, we didn't use this, we have all this extra fuel, boom, let's convert it into fat. And then that'll be converted into fat. So even though you might not be necessarily full, that fat is just accumulating day in, day out. And then, you know, like by the time you wake up to your situation and you look in the mirror, you know, let's say 8 years after you've graduated uni, you're like, oh, where did all this weight come from?
Yeah.
And this is a very common theme, like among people our age now, where they're like noticing their metabolism slowing, you know, they're gaining weight, all of this kind of stuff. And they're like, where did all this come from?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why.
Okay. So going back to the case then of the person that you have on, and he says that he doesn't eat that much. What happened after that? Did you break everything down to him and showed him what it should look like, and what was his reaction then?
Yeah, so his reaction was pretty much the same as anyone that I would tell this to. They were dumbfounded, starstruck. They were like, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
So I sort of broke down using like examples of food. So I just kind of used food swaps as an example, like the one I gave you with the blueberries and the nuts. So it's kind of like volume versus calories. So one of the things I said to him is that your issue is with like satisfaction from your food, right? Obviously, a lot of people, again, me included, I like to eat until my stomach is like stretched out.
It's
like,
an African thing.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, probably.
Eat until you're full.
Yeah.
Eat until you're full.
Exactly. Like, you know, and it's that comfort of knowing that, you know, your belly's full,
Yeah.
you know, you're nice and comfortable, you're safe.
100%.
But again, like, you could do this, like, even, I'm sure you've experienced like having like, you know, like taking a big 2-liter swig of water or half a liter of water in one sitting. How do you usually feel after that?
And you feel full.
Yeah, like that water. It's a thing we call mechanical tension of the stomach, where you can mechanically feel your stomach stretching out, and that actually sends the nerves around your gut, send that message to your brain saying, right, we need to stop putting food into our pie hole, because you know, like, we're good, right? So again, you have to be careful with what foods you're doing that with. So with him, I said, so your issue is likely the sort of that experience of, you know, having food in your mouth, chewing it, swallowing it, you know, and then having it sort of fall into your stomach. Everyone likes that feeling. But if you can just change what you're using to achieve that feeling, then you know, like, your fat loss journey will be far easier than if you were trying to restrict yourself to 1,200 calories, which is, you know, that just does not work, and it's actually counterproductive in the long run.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
so somebody can actually eat more food while consuming less calories
100%.
and losing weight, even though they're eating less.
100%.
Wow.
Like, even when I started, so I've been cutting for about, I started cutting in April. April, May, June, July. We're almost finished August. So about 5 months, I've been consistently cutting. And one of the big things that I noticed is especially towards the start of my cut, like my cheat meals would have been a lot more frequent. So I was having a cheat meal maybe once every week or
Yeah.
once every 2 weeks or whatever it was.
And that cheat meal was whatever you wanted.
Yeah,
Okay.
pizza.
Yeah, yeah.
I love pizza.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So like,
justice to those things,
bro. So I'd have a pizza, right? I'd finish a whole 12-inch pizza to myself. Granted, I might not have necessarily eaten anything for that whole day.
Yeah.
But even still, like that pizza could put me over my calories for the day.
Yeah.
And I might not even be that full.
Yeah.
Right? And then I'd wake up the next morning, you know, and I might step on the scale, or I might even step on the scale like maybe like a few hours into the day, you know, like before actually having my first meal, and I'll notice that my weight went up and I'm like, how? Whereas then there'd be other days where I would fill my stomach up to the brim, like to the point where like I could barely breathe.
Yeah.
But I was eating fruits. I was eating loads, like I love apples.
Yeah.
I'd eat loads of apples, bananas, melons, blueberries, things like that. And then I'd weigh myself, let's say the next afternoon before my first meal, and I find that I lost weight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how?
Yeah.
You know, obviously after using the bathroom.
Yeah,
But I'm
of
like,
course.
how? You know, and it's because that fullness that you're feeling is coming from water content and it's coming from fiber, which fiber is not, our body doesn't use fiber for energy. The fiber feeds our gut, right? So it's like, there's no calories in fiber.
Yeah.
There's obviously no calories in water, but these things still add bulk to the food that you're eating.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So then, in regards to all of that, like I have an example that I'd like to touch on with a person, and then after that, we're going to go into breaking my process down as my coach. So the first one would be like, let's just say there's people that don't eat enough, right? But then they end up getting constipated. What are some things that you could use for somebody that's just like, man, I might go to the toilet? And what's, a healthy range from your experience of the amount of times that somebody should be using the bathroom? Because I've seen cases with people that I know that say that they haven't used the bathroom. Like they're training, they're working out and all this stuff. It's just like for them to go to the bathroom, she told me that she needs to work out for 4 hours before she can use the bathroom, right? So it's a thing where it's like, okay, and then, but she might only, she's consuming way less that food than she needs to be eating in a day, right? So what's the common reasons for that, and how can somebody fix that? Now that we've learned what we learned about before with the BMR, I can see how that would tie back into this.
Could I get it too?
Yeah,
Please.
of course.
Cheers, man.
I can see how that would tie back into that. So it's like, what is it for them? How can they fix that?
So I think I missed the first part of the question because I was focusing on my sweat so much.
No,
And
you're all right.
this is what happens when you eat a lot of protein.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Just kidding. Probably is. But you said that they could suffer from constipation because they've reduced their overall food intake.
I think they're not eating enough.
Yeah.
And they're constipated.
Yeah.
And the only time they can go to the bathroom is if they train crazy, and then even when they do go, there's nothing that comes out.
Yeah. So I would ask a few questions here right off the bat. The first thing is, how much fluid are you taking in? Because I know this is something that is common among many people, which is that we don't tend to drink enough water.
Yeah.
Like if I was to pick a random person off the street, I would guess that they're not drinking enough water, especially women. And I'm not being sexist here. It's just you see it on social media all the time. It's just a thing. You know, like when a girl says, "Oh, I have a headache," or "Did you drink water?"
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I would ask, because being adequately hydrated is going to help your motility, which is the movement of food in your gut. The second thing is, this is kind of a point of contention, especially among carnivores, but I'm going to say it anyways because I think this is just based off solid research. But if you're getting enough fiber in, then you shouldn't have a problem with going to the toilet.
Yep.
So there's two types of fiber, just to kind of touch on it without getting too technical. So there's soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber, as the name suggests, dissolves in your stomach and kind of forms like a gel-like consistency, and kind of helps food move through your gut nice and easily.
Yep.
Kind of like like wet tissues through a pipe or something.
Yep.
Whereas insoluble fiber doesn't dissolve, and it kind of adds that like bulk to your poop.
Yeah.
Basically, like adds that bulk to the stuff that's going through your gut.
Okay,
and,
interesting.
and that'll also kind of help things move through.
Okay.
It'll also sort of like it'll push against the walls of your
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
intestines,
So
kind of
it pushes everything
exactly
as it's going.
triggering
Yeah, yeah.
triggering that kind of involuntary muscle action as
Yeah,
well
yeah, yeah.
in your smooth muscle
Okay, so it's
to
grabbing everything along its way.
exactly,
Okay, okay,
exactly,
okay, okay.
exactly, and moving everything along. So those would be the first two things I would find out first, and if like if they're addressing that, they shouldn't feel constipated.
Mm-hmm.
But if they still are, then I would sort of, exercising
Mm-hmm.
in order to get things moving is definitely a good approach. But I
Yeah.
mean, spending 4 hours in the gym might not be the most,
Yeah.
efficient way to do, especially if you're a busy person, which most of us are with work and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah.
So
Okay, so that means
I'd say
that
just go to your physician.
so the thing would be for the person is just like, okay, well, the foods that you're eating,
Yeah,
are you consuming enough fiber?
fiber. Yeah.
You know, and then are you even eating what you're supposed to be eating in a day?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know some people will, you know, their metabolism slows down.
Yeah.
Hence why they have to work 4 hours
Yes.
in the gym.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
because you're eating less, so your body's kind of in emergency mode,
Yes.
thinking, "Oh, I need to retain everything that I can,"
Yeah.
and as a result, you're not going to the bathroom because your body's trying to keep everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like that. You're almost spot on there.
Correct me, please.
Yeah. So, what I would say there is that, like, the amount of activity that you're doing is going to be a big factor here. So, like you said, like, your metabolism will naturally slow down if you're not doing anything, right? So if you're sitting down for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, then there's really not much of a reason for anything to be moving around that much. Whereas if you're someone who, and it doesn't even have to be like conscious effort or like structured exercise, even if you're someone who naturally finds themselves walking, let's say 10, 15,000 steps a day, whether it's to go to the shop, whether it's to go to the post office, doing all these little things that you do throughout the day, going upstairs, going downstairs, going to the kitchen, all of that. If you're sort of moving steadily throughout the day, believe it or not, that will also kind of speed up the movement of your bowels as well. It'll sort of kind of maintain that regularity. And this is something that I experienced with myself. I'm sure other people who have transitioned from being, sedentary to much more active, I would guess they would report the same findings in that, the more active they are, the more regular their bowel movements are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, so before we finish up, let's dive into my process so far, and be completely honest. Give it how it is. I want it to be like, it's just like, I'm not perfect, so I want, put all the cards on the table for other people to know that I'm also human.
Gotcha.
So let's go from the very beginning until where we are currently, where we've gotten in the program.
Okay, so yeah, I suppose I'll start with finding out, like, what the best approach for you would be. So finding out what intervention worked best for you. So
Yeah.
obviously when we spoke during our consultation, you gave me an insight into how your days usually looked. You're obviously a very busy person with your job and with the other side projects that you have going on as well. Like, you showed me the calendar before this session, and it is pretty full up. So from there, I already had an idea of sort of how to structure the exercise portion of your program to make sure, first of all, that you're adhering to it, right? I can touch on the nutrition part after this, but the nutrition part was actually pretty good, anyways, because you're following a pretty much like a whole foods kind of animal based approach anyway. It was just about kind of refining the numbers. But so when you started off, the first week you were pretty good in that you got most of your cardio sessions done. I think bar 1 or 2, just because there were obviously other things going on, so we moved some stuff around. I was giving you like 4 cardio sessions per week, and on most days 5, yeah. And on most days I was giving you cardio as well as your strength sessions as well. And part of my rationale for doing that is because, as you said, we met through boxing, we sparred with each other. So in my head I was going in it with with the notion that we're similar in our sort of mental framework as well. That you're this. By the way, just to as a disclaimer, this isn't something that I would give to most of my clients because,
Okay.
like, as you know, anyone who does boxing is already a little bit crazy, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I was kind of comfortable enough to kind of like start you off on that kind of thing, where it's like, like every day do your road work,
Yeah.
and then get your strength training done on the days that you need to get it done as well. I think I was giving you 4 strength training sessions or 3.
4, yeah.
Yeah, 4. So again, I did that because I thought you had the capacity for it. Not saying you don't, but obviously you're very busy as well. So as the weeks went by, I think we're in week 3 now. I've kind of gotten a much clearer picture of what your day-to-day life looks like and where your responsibilities lie. So I'd say in terms of adherence, from the second week, from the second week to now, I noticed that there was inconsistency. You were inconsistent with the cardio aspect of it.
Yep.
So obviously you were traveling and things like that. So I noticed that those morning cardio sessions weren't being done to the level of adherence that I wanted them done. With the strength training aspect, though, I noticed that was kind of, for you, that was the main priority.
Yeah.
Right? And this is good. And it ties back to what I was saying earlier about when someone is getting started on a body recomposition journey, i.e. lose fat, preserve muscle, prioritize resistance training, which you did. So I'd give you a gold star for that. Now, I think you missed a couple of sessions there as well, but not nearly as bad as
the cardio sessions.
as the cardio aspect. Yeah. Okay. So overall, I would say your adherence to the program so far has been satisfactory. It's been good. There's definitely room for improvement there, but that's also where my job as a coach at Always Sapien becomes important as well. I mean, this is what you pay me for.
Yeah.
So I looked at that. I looked at your data from the last 2 weeks, and I said, right, okay, this is his busy schedule. Obviously, we keep in touch almost every day.
Yep.
So I kind of know what your movements are. Like, I know what you have to do, what responsibilities you have. So I kind of looked at that, went back and looked at, where you missed your sessions, why you missed your sessions, things like that. And then that kind of informed my decisions in terms of reorganizing your program. So now what I've done is I've reduced your cardio commitments to 3 times a week, right? And then varying them up according to your existing preferences. So I know you like skipping, as do I. And I know that you have already got some runs done.
Yep.
And you've been doing your runs relatively well as well. Like, I can see your time improving. So I thought, okay, give him 1 skipping session. So like, start off his cardio week with a skipping session for 20 minutes. And then for the other 2 cardio sessions, do a 3K and a 5K. So kind of progressively increasing the demand.
Okay, so finish the week strong.
Exactly, finish the week strong, especially as you approach the weekend, because I remember you told me that on Saturdays and Sundays is when you kind of like to take things easy. So I want that last cardio session to be a nice 5K where, you're kind of leaving it all on the road. And then with your resistance training, so what I had for you before, you were doing it 4 days a week, 5 days a week.
Yep.
So I gave you a split on the rig that you have now, where you were splitting between upper body and lower body. Now, again, over the last 2 weeks, I kind of had a look at your adherence to those sessions, and my first thought was, okay, we want to make sure that we're hitting your major muscle groups at least twice a week, right? Because the research suggests that you should be getting at least 10 sets of like sort of each major muscle groups in per week, which kind of, when you divide it up, that kind of divides roughly into 2 sessions of each per week.
Yeah.
So to make sure that you weren't missing one of those, right? So 2 upper body, 2 lower body. What I decided to do was reduce the frequency of your strength training sessions to 3 days a week, and then just making those full body sessions.
Okay.
Right. So the duration of these sessions will still be pretty similar, but now you're targeting both your legs and your push muscles and your pull muscles all in the same day, and you're doing that 3 times a week. So you're still getting enough exposure in terms of the total sets you're doing in a week.
Yep.
And it's also kind of accommodating for your very busy schedule, in that you're not waking up every morning thinking that, okay, I have this to do, I have this to do, I have this to do every single day. So you're now getting days in between. Sorry about that. You're getting days in between where you have a bit of breathing room to kind of do whatever you need to do. So my rationale here is that hopefully this will give you time to sort of plan ahead on a day where you do have downtime, where you don't have a strength session to do and just a cardio session, which takes 30 minutes, 20 minutes. and then you can use the rest of the day to fulfill the other commitments you have, and then like plan for the next day without having to think, oh crap, okay, at the end of the day I need to get this done
Yep.
this evening because I didn't get it done in the morning. That kind of thing.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Yeah, no, that's solid. And now in terms of and I've been seeing my weight slowly drop as well. So
Yeah.
now I'm sitting comfortably at like at the very beginning of 117, like at the very start of it. And I
Yeah.
think when I started I was 120.
Yeah.
Right. So I've dropped 3 kilos in this time.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I still don't know what weight I was, but I'm just assuming it was
Yeah.
120.
Yeah. A lot of it was probably water weight and excess weight as well.
Exactly.
Like
So,
that,
but now I'm sitting at 117 comfortably. So I still have another 7 kilos to go to get down to 110. So how did you build this program around what my goals were? So I said, I think I'd like to get down to 110 kilos.
Yeah.
I said, why? I said, okay, for me, I want to get cut up a little bit, but also because I feel really good at 120. I want to, like, so what will I feel like at 110?
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of my rationale for it. It's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that means if I feel this good, that means I feel even way better
Yeah.
at that weight because it's just less to carry around. That's 10 kilos.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
So how did you build that program around what my goals were? Like, how did you determine what my calories were supposed to be? How did you determine what my, weight sets were supposed to be? How did you determine how many cardio sessions and like what I need to burn each week to be able to drop the weight, to drop the kilo per week?
Yeah.
Like, how did you build the program out? So that way, if somebody's listening and considering a program like this, they know what goes into it, like the level of detail that goes into something like
Good
that.
question. Great question. So, just as a first point of clarity, I've set your target at 112.
112. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, same thing.
Yeah. So you started off around 118 to 120, and so at Always Sapien, for 1-to-1 programs, I usually take things in a 6-week cycle. So every 6 weeks is called one cycle.
Yep.
So I do things on a 6-week basis, and I use sort of where you're currently at to determine where I think you can get to comfortably and safely within those 6 weeks.
Okay.
So for you started, let's say, at 120.
Yep.
And for you to get from 120 to 112 is about 8 kilograms, right? 118 to 112, about 6 kilograms. So assuming that you started at 118, because that's actually the specific weight I had in mind when I set your goals and your objectives. Which, by the way, the first thing you should do as well, once you do get into like if you do decide to like make a program for yourself, is goal setting. Which is why obviously I said before, find out what your BMR is, find out how much you burn, because without these numbers, you're not going to be able to set yourself specific goals, right? Your goals need to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, right? That's the SMART principle of goal setting. So what I did then was, so again, the research and the literature everyone agrees in the research currently that 0.5 kilos a week to 1 kilo a week is sort of like a safe range of weight loss. Now, of course, you can go on the extreme end of that, which I personally do. But again, this is kind of taken on a case-by-case basis. You have to kind of figure out where your tolerance is. But of course, I'm not you. You're you. And of course, I'll get to know you more. But from what I know from you already, I don't know enough to push you that hard. So I said, okay, because I already kind of know what your character profile is, being a boxer, and like I said earlier, people who decide to embark in any kind of combat sports, I assume they're a little bit screw in the head. So I said, okay,
just a tad,
just a tad. So 1 kilo a week should be okay for you. That like I think you can manage that. So that was the first thing. So I was like, okay, so each week I want you losing 1 kilo a week. So when you extrapolate that over 6 weeks, that's roughly 6 kilos, right? So from 118 to 112 is 6 kilos. And that's why I set your target to 6 kilos.
Okay.
Yeah. To make sure that each week you can hit that milestone.
Yep.
And as long as you're on track and you're trusting the process and you're hitting that, you're definitely going to get to that 112. It just comes down to, simple arithmetic. So that was sort of my rationale for setting your targets in terms of weight. Now, off of that, now that I know how much I want you to lose over the course of the first cycle and over the course of each week, that then informs me on how much of a deficit you need to be in terms of your energy balance, calories in, calories out. You need to be in each day in order to lose that. So 1 kilo, and I could be slightly off here because I know the Americans do this in pounds, and that was kind of the format that I learned. But
Yep.
1 kilo is about 7,000 calories, give or take 500 calories. So knowing that, I know that I want you to be in a deficit by the end of the week of about 7,000 calories. Let's say 10,000, just to give it a nice round number.
Yep.
So in order to achieve that, you need to be in a deficit of close to 1,000 calories each day. Now, for most of my calories, for most of my clients, I say be in a deficit of 500 calories each day, which will translate to 3,500 calories a week, which is about half a kilo.
Yep.
Right. So 0.5 kilos. So for you, setting your weekly target at 1 kilo a week would translate to about 1,000 calories a day. I know it's slightly more than that, which is obviously good. So then knowing that, then I obviously set your nutritional goals, taking your height, your weight, your age, and your body fat percentage into account as well to gauge how much you were burning per day.
Yep.
Obviously, I know what your physical activity routine looked like before we even started, because you go and you train at your boxing gym regularly as well. So I kind of had an idea of how much you were burning. So then the final piece of the puzzle was then to decide how much you need to eat. So at first we tried the approach of me tracking your calories with like a built-in feature that I have in the coaching app that I use. But then when we figured that that might not be the most efficient use of our time, because
too inconsistent. It could have been it was very random.
Yeah, because you're kind of eating inconsistently, but still kind of sticking with the same principles, which was animal-based whole food diet. So what we decided to do was, since you had experience with MyFitnessPal, which is a calorie tracking app, you use that and basically just link that in with the coaching app to give me visibility on your nutritional metrics. So with that, I gave you how much you needed to eat in the day, and you also had an idea of how much you were burning in the day. All you needed to do was just not to exceed the calorie target that I had in there for you. So that whatever you were burning in the day was kind of like a given anyway. So that was ensuring that you were staying in your 1,000 calorie deficit. So to make sure that you were hitting that number in terms of your energy burn, especially before getting your smartwatch that I see you've finally gotten. Let's go. That kind of informed my decision on how to structure your workouts. So the way you're working out currently is kind of like would you agree that it's like a high intensity style of workout where you're kind of taking short rest times?
Yeah, definitely is.
Yeah. And I sort of picked that approach on purpose because I knew that you already have, like, you're not a complete beginner to training. Like you said, you have a history of sports. You're still relatively active. So
we were used to the 30-second break before.
Exactly. So I knew that I could prescribe that kind of approach for you. Now, this isn't something I do for all my clients. Obviously, for other clients who are actual beginners, I would recommend case by case. I'd start off with maybe 2 minutes rest, to prevent their muscles from peeling off and flailing off the bone. But for you, a nice 30-second rest approach, making sure that you're building, a nice amount of metabolic byproducts within the cell and building up a lot of lactate and ultimately driving up your metabolic rate was enough for. Sorry, I messed up that sentence. So I did that to make sure that your metabolic rate was ramped up, to ensure that you were at least hitting that daily energy burn target or even overshooting that.
Okay.
And then with the cardio as well, especially at the start of the day, we were just making sure that at least at the very beginning of the day, like those 5-kilometer runs you were doing in the morning, you're burning at least 500 calories from that. Right? So we were making sure that right off the bat, you were already like starting that process, getting the factory switched on, getting all the machinery working and everything, and heating up your body and ramping up that energy burn. So in a nutshell, I know I rambled a bit, but in a nutshell, that was sort of how that was kind of how I informed my decisions on how to set your goals and then how to actually design the intervention
Yeah.
to reach those goals.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So I never checked what my BMR was, but the fact that you have my target for each day set at 2,300 calories,
Yeah.
and I need to be losing 1,000 a day, so I should actually be eating 3.3 thousand calories
To maintain.
to maintain.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I don't
Yeah.
know if I could even eat that much.
Really?
Like, that's
yeah.
because sometimes I finish.
Well, on your current diet, probably not. But,
My current diet probably not, like,
Yeah.
because I finished the day with sometimes, like yesterday I finished with like 500 left
Yeah,
over. Sometimes some days I
I
finished
saw
with
that.
700 left over.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like if it was 3-3, that is interesting.
Yeah. And like the fact that you even have 500, 700 left over, and then you're still burning the energy on top of that.
Yeah.
Because the 2,300 is to ensure that you're in that 1,000 deficit.
Yeah, exactly.
So like,
So anything
you'll
other
probably
than that
see
is-
on
it's
your
an
watch
extra.
now, but at the end of the day, if you look at the calorie burn on your watch, you're probably burning about 3,003 or 3,004.
Interesting.
Yeah, like on average for me, like right now, because I didn't do my run this morning, but I will after this. I usually do my runs in the morning, but right now I'm on 1,700 calories.
Already.
Right, yeah. An average day for me is about 3,000 to 5,000 calories
Yeah.
burned.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's how much I burn on average. So if I'm eating about 2,400, then
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
the fat will just melt off.
Yeah. So before we finish, you started a challenge. You were 115 kilos in the new year.
Yeah.
And your aim is to hit 90 kilos.
Yeah.
How has that process been?
The process has been, I've learned a lot about myself during the process. Overall, it hasn't actually been too difficult, just because, especially, like I will say, knowledge is power. Like, because of all the information that I have, and like I know that the process doesn't have to be complicated. It's actually quite simple. But of course, there are days where it can be hard on the mental for various reasons.
Of course.
But overall, the process has been, it's been fun. It's been a process of self-discovery. Right now, I'm currently at 93 kilos, 93.5.
Yep.
So I've lost about 20, gosh, my maths is off, 22 kilos? Yeah, something like that.
Crazy.
Yeah, so
22 kgs.
Yeah, 22 kg in 5 months. But obviously some months I yielded more fat loss than others.
Yeah.
Like especially towards the start of the program, which
Of
is why
course, just fall off.
exactly, which is why, especially in your position at the very start, you're going to notice like the weight is going to melt off pretty fast, and then you're going to hit a point where it's going to slow down, and then that's where you have to lock in.
Yeah.
Like you really got to lock in, and focus on the end point. So for me, when I hit about 97, that's when I noticed that things started to slow down. I was like, okay,
Really?
right, so this is what I'm working with now.
Okay.
Right, so then the weight loss comes a lot slower. So I could be losing 0.5 kilos on an average week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's still keeping the same calorie deficit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so why is that?
Now, I will say though, again, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, in that the healthy, comfortable range would be, half a kilo to a kilo per week.
I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah. Now, during like the first 8 weeks of my cut,
This guy's a maniac.
yeah. During the first 8 weeks of my cut, I was in a 2,000 calorie deficit each day, and the fat was flying off. Like
man.
I was losing, like some weeks I was down 3 kilos, in just 1 week.
Yeah.
Most weeks in those first 8 weeks, I was losing like 2 to 3 kilos a week
Yeah.
minimum, and then obviously I had to kind of pull back the reins a little bit.
Of course.
And it does take a little bit of like mental management as well.
Yep.
You definitely do need that mental break where you're eating more than usual as well, because any process of progressing yourself isn't linear.
Yep.
So you are going to have dips,
Yep.
and fluctuations there as well. But yeah, at the start of my fat loss journey, I was losing a lot of weight, and I was in a massive deficit.
Definitely. So how have you been feeling in terms of like energy, strength, stamina, endurance? I just saw the 5K that you ran at
man.
450?
Yeah, last night, man.
Crazy. You just flew like.
Yeah, oh man, cruise control.
Yeah.
As I put on my story, that was one of the more enjoyable runs as well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But dude, I feel great. Energy levels are the best they've probably ever been.
Wow.
I feel even better than I felt as a teenager in secondary
Wow.
school. I feel like a 14-year-old.
Crazy.
Which is what everyone should be aiming for. This is what I call the fountain of the youth, right? Slowing down that aging process as much as you can.
Fact.
And exercise resistance training is the way to do it. So yeah, energy levels are sky high. the one thing that I really want to highlight to the listeners is sleep. My sleep is the best it's ever been. So I think we touched on this as well. We talked about this where like, you know, like if you're eating close to bedtime, especially if you're eating like a lot of carbs, which a lot of people do, they'll go to sleep and then they'll wake up feeling like they got hit by a bus.
Yeah, you feel like hungover.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a hangover effect. Yeah. Exactly. Whereas now I find when I have my last meal of the day, let's say 3 to 4 hours before I plan to go to bed, the quality of my sleep, like I sleep deeply, because it's one thing to get your 8 hours of sleep, but that 8 hours could be poor quality sleep.
Yeah, 100%.
Or you could sleep, and I'm not recommending you sleep 5-6 hours, but you could sleep 5 or 6 hours, but have a really good quality deep sleep and wake up feeling like
you close your eyes and you enter REM.
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't take you 4 hours to get into REM.
Like last night, I didn't even remember falling asleep. I was just out like a light. And you know, like I had like 2 really weird dreams. But I won't go into that. But like I find I dream really vividly as well now. And I don't know what relation that has to it, but I noticed I wasn't dreaming like that, you know, when I was, you know, living the old way. But now I sleep very deeply. I dream a lot. I wake up around the same time every morning as well, regardless of what time I go to sleep. But I don't feel tired. And that's the main thing that I've gotten from that in terms of the sleep aspect, is that like when I wake up, I'm ready to just attack the day. Like I'm up. I'm not spending time in bed scrolling through social media, being another day, kill me. You know, I'm just. I open my eyes. I'm like, oh, thank God, it's a new day. I get up and I just do what I need to do, whether it's my laundry, whatever, blah blah blah. So energy levels sky high. Sleep quality is great. Obviously, self-esteem, because you know, like the discipline aspect of it, and kind of, you know, the leaner you are, the more self-respect you have for yourself as well, right? And there's actually a lot of research into like the benefits of being lean. So it's not just an aesthetic thing. I know on my page, you know, like I post myself a lot, you know, mirror pictures, all of that. But that's obviously just to, you know, that's just a
marketing.
Market the product and all of that. But my true motivation for getting lean is actually the health benefits that I get out of it. You know, like I said, the sleep, the energy levels, even at work, the clarity of focus that I have. You know, like my thinking isn't nearly as cloudy as it used to be. You know, I think very sharply. I find that it's easier for me to sustain like high levels of effort for longer periods of time, whether it's mental effort or physical effort. You know, I find myself less. I'm less emotionally volatile. So even if, like, you know, like the old expression, you know, not crying over spilt milk. I cry much less over spilt milk now. So like if something happens that wasn't expected, it's easier for me to just kind of reel my mind back into like that kind of stable state that I'm in, and just kind of accept things, move on, problem solve. So there are many, many, many benefits to becoming lean, and those are just a few.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Man, hour and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
That flew.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I told you.
Yo, that flew.
It always happens when we get deep into it. Like everyone has the same reaction. When
an hour and a half. Crazy.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that, man. That was
great.
fun. This was fun.
So, guys, really appreciate you guys for listening. You know, this will be very soon. Please tell them where they can find you on all of your. You know, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, so right now, Instagram is where I spend most of my time. So you can find me on Instagram at alwayssapien. So that's always.sapien, SAPIEN. And you can also find me on TikTok, which I'm definitely trying to be more active on. And that's the same handle at always.sapien.
Nice. Okay. And then the programs that you provide, you have the consultation, but I'm sure people can just reach out to you if they have any questions.
Yes, absolutely. So you can DM me on Instagram, TikTok, and you can also book a free consultation with me as well, just by clicking the link in my bio on Instagram.
Nice. All right. Well, my guy, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you on the next one.